Unless our demands are met, this plane will fall on 55,000 screaming fans. Live on national television. That was the message. One jetliner, one stadium, and 15 minutes to impact. The lead pilot panicked. The backup froze, and command said there was no one left. But then she stepped forward from the quiet edges of a forgotten flight school, pulled on a flight suit she hadn't touched in years, and in complete silence, she flew closer than fear itself. Then without hesitation, she pressed the comm switch and said, "Control, tell the president he has 5 minutes to pray, then I make contact." They thought she was gone, but when the sky called, she answered. No rank, no orders, just instinct. And at 20,000 feet, even fear went silent. The desert sun scorched the tarmac like a punishment. At the edge of the faded landing strip, where broken windsocks flapped like forgotten flags, Sierra Echo Flight Academy sat in silence, a skeleton of its former self. Fewer cadets, fewer planes, just enough life to make it look operational, but not enough to ask questions. And that's exactly how Captain Ava Morgan wanted it. To the new cadets, she was just Ms. Morgan, the quiet instructor with military posture and the gaze of someone who'd measured distance by death and not by meters. They didn't know her past. The younger ones gossiped she used to fly cargo planes. Others thought she'd been fired for insubordination. None of them got close enough to find out. She rarely spoke, never smiled. But when she walked past the hangars, even the engines seemed to hush. Years ago, Ava had flown Falcon-class air support over volatile airspace in the Middle East. The file says she completed 9 covert missions. What the file doesn't say, what she never speaks of, is that she lost her co-pilot, Major Eric Vance, on the last one. A betrayal from within the chain of command, a coded order that no one admitted to, and a black box that conveniently disappeared in a sandstorm. She survived, barely, but she didn't come back. Not really. Instead, she vanished into civilian life. No medals, no interviews, no welcome home. Just a one-way bus ticket to the edge of nowhere, where the wind howled, the fuel was cheap, and broken planes needed fixing more than broken people did. At Sierra Echo, Ava kept to herself. Her flight suit stayed locked in a metal case under her bunk. Her helmet was unpolished, and her war record buried deeper than the foundations of the academy itself. To the academy director, she was a contractor. To the students, she was a ghost with a clipboard. No one noticed that the old F-22 tucked in the corner of Hangar 9 bore her call sign. Valkyrie, now faded like a rumor. There's something deeply haunting about those who've seen too much and choose to say nothing. Ava embodied that silence, but not as a weakness, as a shield. Her silence wasn't empty. It was protective. She had nothing to prove. She didn't need to tell the cadets how many times she'd landed with one engine or how she once flew blind under radar to save a SEAL team pinned under fire. It wasn't about glory anymore. It was about living in the aftermath. Some veterans returned to parades. Others, like Ava, returned to dust. And maybe that's the greatest tragedy, that some of our best warriors blend so deeply into civilian clothes, we forget they were ever warriors at all. One particular cadet, a 19-year-old named Harper, once asked her, "Ma'am, why don't you fly anymore?" Ava didn't even look up from her maintenance log. She just replied, "Flying isn't the hard part. Landing is," and walked away. But late at night, when the desert cooled and the hangars went quiet, Ava sometimes walked out onto the strip alone. She'd stand under the stars, arms crossed, as if waiting for something the wind might bring back. A voice, a memory, a second chance. And some nights, she opened the old flight suitcase, never put it on, just looked at it. Until that one morning, the Academy radio picked up a whisper. Emergency. Civilian airliner hijacked. Heading toward a stadium. 2 million watching. No pilots left. And something changed in Ava's eyes. We often imagine heroes wearing uniforms and standing under flags. But many heroes now walk in silence, wearing civilian jackets, teaching classes, fixing old planes. They carry memories like weighted vests and live as ghosts among us. Ava Morgan is one of them. And when the world forgot her name, she didn't complain. She waited. for the moment it might matter again. That moment was coming. It started like any other training run. The sky was open, the air dry, and the heat shimmered off the wings of the aging Cessna 172 as it taxied down the strip. In the left seat sat Tyler Greaves, barely 20, smug, wearing designer sunglasses that cost more than the plane. He grinned like he already had a hangar full of jets waiting for him back home. His father was some aerospace billionaire with political ties, and Tyler had never heard no unless it was followed by, "But here's a better deal." Next to him, in the right seat, Ava Morgan watched with the cold patience of someone who'd seen cocky pilots leave the tarmac in caskets. "Don't treat her like a toy," she warned as Tyler pushed the throttle. He smirked. "Relax, Morgan. I've flown in Gulfstream since I was 12. Ava said nothing. The plane lifted, slightly nose-high, sloppy. But they were off the ground. At 3,000 feet, Tyler started playing with the yoke like it was a video game. He banked left too hard. The nose dropped. Altitude dipped dangerously. Ava reached for the dual controls. "Let me take it." "I got it," he snapped. "We're just having fun." Then it happened. He overcorrected on a climb, stalled the airspeed, and the Cessna shuddered like a dying animal. The nose tipped forward, the engine coughed, and suddenly fun turned into freefall. In an instant, Ava's hands slammed to the throttle. Her other gripped the yoke. Her voice changed. Not the passive, detached tone the students knew. This voice was steel, cold, sharp, edged with memory. "Pitch down 5 degrees. Now. Don't touch anything unless I say. Eyes on the horizon." Even Tyler froze. Something in her voice overrode him. It wasn't just instruction. It was command. A voice not born in flight school, but in war zones, in emergency dive pulls, in mid-air losses where 2 seconds separated medals from memorials. As she recovered the stall, something flickered behind Ava's eyes. Flashbacks, not of words, but of sounds. "Missile lock! Evasive now! Engine 2 is gone! Punch it out! Valkyrie, you're flying blind! Abort! Repeat, abort!" "No, I see it." That last voice was hers, younger, harder, and just as calm as it was now. Inside her, old alarms rang again, the ones no one else could hear, and for a second, it wasn't a student plane. It was combat. It was her and Eric again, the last mission, the betrayal that left her spiraling in a blacked-out bird while the command feed went silent. No backup, no radar, just instinct. Back in the present, the Cessna leveled out. Ava breathed out through her nose, steady. Tyler looked pale. What just happened?" "You almost died," she said flatly. "You stalled it." "I didn't know." "You didn't listen." There was no anger in her tone, just truth. And that hit harder than any scream. For the first time, Tyler didn't talk back. He just stared at her. Really stared. Not at the woman in the right seat, but something else. Something trained. Something deadly. Something that didn't belong in civilian skies anymore. Back on the ground, the flight director approached the plane after hearing the commotion. "Everything all right?" Ava just said, "Student overcorrected. Stall. We recovered." But Tyler stepped forward. "No," he said, surprisingly soft. She saved the plane. I messed up bad." Ava's face gave away nothing, but her hand tightened slightly around her clipboard. Later that evening, Ava sat alone in the maintenance hangar. The sun had dipped, and shadows stretched across the tarmac. She stared at a rusted panel from an old training jet, her reflection warping in the aluminum. She hadn't meant for it to come out. The voice, the instinct. She'd spent years bearing Valkyrie, but in that moment, the stall, the drop, there was no choice. It was her or gravity, and gravity doesn't care about past trauma. You don't train for moments like that. You survive them because of who you are underneath the fear. Under the rank, the silence, the years spent trying to disappear. When everything goes wrong, what's left isn't your resume. It's your reflexes, your decisions made in the cracks of time, your voice when everyone else freezes. Ava didn't pull rank. She didn't quote a rule book. She didn't check who the kid's father was. She saw a plane falling and acted. Because deep down, beneath the dusty jacket, behind the guarded eyes, Valkyrie still flew, and the sky still recognized her, even if the world forgot. It began with a low drone, not from an aircraft engine, but from the emergency broadcast system. At first, no one at Sierra Echo Flight Academy reacted. A few instructors thought it was just another weekly drill. The alert tone was always there, annoying, predictable, ignorable. But then it didn't stop. Phones buzzed, radios glitched. The TV in the instructor's lounge blinked to red. And on every screen in the building, the same message appeared in brutal simplicity. Emergency alert. Flight 6-12 has been hijacked. Suspected destination? Downtown Los Angeles. Estimated onboard, 180 passengers. In the silence that followed, only the wind dared to move. Inside the small air traffic office at Sierra Echo, Tyler Greaves stood frozen beside a few other students. His phone slipped slightly in his hand as he stared at the notification. The World Series. Dodger Stadium. 55,000 people. He looked up just in time to catch a glimpse of Ava Morgan through the window. She hadn't moved, but something had changed. She stood stock still by the hangar, shoulders squared, staring up at the sky like she could already hear the engines of the incoming threat. Her clipboard dangled loosely at her side. Her eyes were no longer the eyes of a flight instructor. They were something else, something ancient, something activated. The news feeds flickered to chopper footage. A Boeing 737, Flight 612, circled over Los Angeles airspace in wide, calculated arcs. Below it, panic had already begun. Cars slammed brakes on freeways. Crowds poured from the stadium like ants from a burning hill. "Why aren't they shooting it down?" a student whispered. Another instructor replied, "They can't. It's too low, too crowded. One mistake and—" He didn't finish. The tension snapped as a black SUV screeched into the academy parking lot, dust curling off its wheels. Its license plate was military, clean, unmistakable. Tyler blinked. "Is that—" The SUV's back door swung open before the wheel stopped. A woman stepped out, silver-haired, uniformed, walking with purpose that made everyone instinctively move aside. General Camille Rourke. Ava was already walking to meet her. The moment they faced each other, time seemed to pull taut. No words were spoken at first, just silence and the sound of two ghosts acknowledging each other. Then formally but not coldly, the general said, "Captain Ava Morgan." The name echoed like a bullet across the small lobby. Tyler's head snapped up. Captain? She was military? But it was what came next that shattered everything. Call sign, Valkyrie. Every instructor in the room froze. One even dropped his coffee. You didn't say that name unless you meant it. Valkyrie was a name they'd heard whispered in old base legends. A pilot who had once talked down a hostile fighter without firing a shot, who had guided a damaged stealth jet through enemy airspace, blind and alone, and came out alive. Twice. Some said she flew with the ghosts of the fallen. Others said she never missed a mission. But no one ever said she'd been at Sierra Echo, fixing fuel tanks, grading student checklists. Ava didn't react. She simply replied, "I'm retired, General." Rourke stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Not anymore." She held out a folder. Inside, radar scans, flight paths, response protocols. Every option had been exhausted. The lead interceptor had panicked and turned back. The backup was 20 minutes out. Flight 6112 was 14 minutes from impact. "We have one bird fueled and ready at Edward," Rourke said, "but no pilot trained for this kind of intercept." Ava glanced out the window. The sky was deceptively calm. Blue, open, quiet, and yet chaos loomed just beyond the horizon. Rourke stepped in front of her. "This isn't about orders, it's about lives." From behind them, Tyler watched the exchange, wide-eyed, every puzzle piece locked in. The voice in the stall, the calm under pressure, the reflexes, the way even the hangar seemed to listen when she walked past. She wasn't just a pilot. She was a weapon the military had once unleashed, and then buried. He whispered under his breath, almost reverently, "Valkyrie." Ava didn't speak for several seconds. Then finally, quietly without drama, she nodded. "I'll fly." Rourke gave a single sharp breath through her nose. Relief, maybe even gratitude. No rank, no command, Ava added. I do this my way. Rourke nodded. As always. As the general walked out to prep the transport to Edwards Air Force Base, Ava stood still for just a moment longer, looking at her students. Some stared in shock, others in awe, a few in fear. But Tyler looked at her like a man who had just realized the person grading his landings was once the final voice over enemy airspace. She met his eyes. He didn't look away. Miss Morgan, he asked hesitantly. She gave him a rare half-smile. It's Captain, just for today. The battlefield doesn't always wait for your permission to return. Sometimes it just finds you. At the edge of a dusty runway, years after you've buried your past. It doesn't care that you're tired, that you were promised peace, that you walked away for good reasons. Because when the sky cracks open, when every radar says no pilot available, it calls your name anyway. And sometimes you answer. Because the war may end, but the warrior never truly disappears. The twin rotor blades of the Black Hawk chopped through the desert sky as Ava sat wordless beside General Rourke, helmet cradled in her lap. The interior cabin was a chorus of static radio updates and rumbling vibration, but Ava heard none of it. Her eyes were locked on the horizon. Not just the land ahead, but something older, something deeper. The moment before flight. There's a silence there, carved between memory and motion, and that's where Valkyrie had always lived. At Edwards Air Force Base, the tarmac burned with heat and anticipation. The F-22 Raptor stood gleaming under the afternoon sun, like a predator waiting for permission to move. The support crew, young and uncertain, stood frozen as Ava stepped down from the Black Hawk. They watched her walk. Some didn't know who she was. The older ones did, and saluted without being asked. Inside the prep room, her old flight suit waited. Same fabric, same patch. Valkyrie, black on faded green. The techs had stitched it back without comment. Ava ran her fingers over it once, then pulled it on like armor. The moment the zipper clicked shut, she wasn't retired anymore. At 32,000 feet, Flight 612 cut through the sky, eerily smooth. Below it, millions panicked. Emergency broadcasts had emptied the stadium. The Dodgers had stopped mid-inning, but the airliner kept moving. A ghost ship aimed at the heart of a city. Inside, Rashid Kamar leaned forward in the cockpit, sweat beating beneath his dark keffiyeh. He didn't speak often, but his silence commanded his men. His eyes never left the horizon, not because of confidence, but because he knew this wasn't going to go unnoticed for long. Still, they didn't expect silence in return. Back in the Raptor, Ava sat alone with the stars and the hum of her jet. Valkyrie, you're cleared to intercept. Estimated visual in 6 minutes, said Rourke's voice through the comms. Copy. Radio silence from here on. Ava flipped the switch. The channel went dead. Now it was just her and them. She dropped into a low-pressure corridor, letting the stealth skin of the F-22 melt into the sky. The hijackers' radar, if they had any, wouldn't pick her up until it was too late. She approached from below. Every movement was exact, calculated. Her hands moved like a concert pianist's, subtle, quiet, deadly. Then, she saw it. Flight 612. She'd flown that model before. She knew its blind spots, its turbulence tolerances, its weaknesses. She pulled in, closer, closer than fear itself. Through the front cockpit window of Flight 612, Rashid leaned forward, his breath caught. Something felt wrong. No alarms, no missile lock, just a chill in the air, an invisible weight pressing from outside. He looked to his left and saw it. The F-22 Raptor, gliding like death just feet away from his wing. No threat, no weapons fired, just presence. Inside the commercial plane, a crew member screamed. One of the passengers fainted, but Ava didn't move. Not yet. Then she touched the wingtip. Just a whisper of pressure, subtle enough to shift Flight 612 off course. The hijackers didn't notice at first, until their heading began to curve. "What is this? What's happening?" one of them shouted. Rashid yanked the controls. Nothing. The jet kept veering left, away from the stadium, away from Los Angeles. Panic, arguing, confusion. And then Ava clicked her secondary comm, a short-range direct burst, one frequency, just 4 words. Look out your window. There was silence in the cockpit. Then Rashid did it. He looked and saw her, helmet down, visor up, expressionless, steady, unblinking. Then came her final transmission. I'm closer than your fear. Inside Flight 612, chaos erupted. The hijackers screamed orders. Passengers cried. The pilot, still tied up, stared in disbelief. She's guiding us, he whispered. Because somehow the plane wasn't spiraling, wasn't being forced. It was being nudged, corrected. Ava didn't shoot, didn't threaten. She just refused to let them reach the city. Every second she adjusted the micro angles. Small wing pressure, trim control offset. She used her fighter like a shadow, leaning against a larger force until it shifted. It was a dance, and she led. The plane veered further west over the Pacific. Inside, Rashid grabbed the mic. We have explosives. You cannot stop us forever. Ava didn't answer. She guided them toward Vandenberg Air Force Base, a long runway carved for emergencies just like this. Land the plane, she transmitted coldly. You'll walk out alive, or you won't walk out at all. They hesitated. Why haven't you killed us? Rashid demanded. She finally spoke, quiet and lethal. Because mercy is still my choice. And that was the final break. The hijackers dropped their weapons. Flight 6112 touched down under escort. Every passenger survived, and not a single bullet had been fired. As Ava circled back toward Edwards, the F-22 gleamed against the sun. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a single victory roll. Silent and clean. There's a unique violence and restraint in knowing you could destroy something and choosing not to. The world praises loud power, explosions, force, fire. But true mastery is knowing when not to pull the trigger, when to win with pressure, not destruction, with angles, not anger, with silence. Ava Morgan, Valkyrie, didn't save Flight 612 by outgunning anyone. She outflew them, outthought them, outweighted their panic, and in doing so, reminded the world, the most dangerous weapon in the sky is a woman with nothing to prove. The wheels of Flight 612 screeched against the tarmac at Vandenberg Air Force Base, the massive Boeing 737 rumbling to a halt as emergency crews raced into position. The moment the cabin doors swung open, the quiet inside the plane broke into screams, sobs, prayers, and the sound of 180 lives being given back to the world. No gunfire, no impact, just a woman in a fighter jet who knew how to guide fear without feeding it. Ava Morgan didn't exit with them. She was already back in the sky, silent, vanishing into the western sun as if she'd never been there at all. At Edwards AFB, the landing crew stood in solemn formation as the F-22 Raptor touched down. The dust rose gently like smoke from a fire that had never fully burned. Ava popped the canopy, but didn't move right away. The silence after impact. It was always louder than the moment itself. When she finally climbed down, she didn't speak. She removed her helmet, tucked it under one arm, and walked straight past the applause, the cameras, and the waiting brass. General Rourke tried to intercept her. You should know, Rourke said softly. Every major outlet is running it. They're calling it the Valkyrie maneuver. Ava didn't stop walking. By the time the press caught up, she was gone. No debrief, no interview, no medal ceremony. Just a flight suit hung back on a hook, the patch still reading Valkyrie. Dusty, folded, and quiet again. The story broke within hours. Who is Valkyrie? Fighter pilot saves stadium in silent midair rescue. Mystery, jet intercepts, Flight 612, without firing a shot. Old photos resurfaced. Grainy combat footage. A declassified audio clip from a mission years ago where her calm voice guided a damaged aircraft back from behind enemy lines. Some called her a ghost. Others called her a myth. But one headline cut through them all. The woman the Pentagon forgot and the sky remembered. Back at Sierra Echo Flight Academy, change came fast. The board of directors voted unanimously to rename it the Morgan Institute for Tactical Aviation. No one objected. Even those who never liked her had watched the footage, had read the flight logs, had seen the satellite image of two planes dancing above Los Angeles, one of them protecting the city with nothing but wing pressure and resolve. The name on the old hangar doors was replaced with fresh steel letters. Not Captain, not Valkyrie, just Morgan. In the newly christened lecture hall, Tyler Greaves stood in front of his graduating class, no longer wearing sunglasses or bravado. He wore the patch she once wore, not because he earned her legacy, but because he understood its weight. He delivered the first class address, and when he ended, he didn't say her full name. He simply said, "I learned how to fly here, but she taught me what it means to hold lives in your hands and never flinch." Outside, past the tarmac, a woman leaned against the fence line in civilian clothes. She watched the ceremony quietly, her presence unnoticed by most. Ava Morgan stood in the shadow of the new nameplate, not to bask, not to correct them, just to know, to see that the silence she had chosen all those years ago had made space for something greater. Not a legacy, a future. As the crowd began to disperse, she turned and walked away, her boots quiet in the dust. She didn't stay for photos. She didn't take credit. She left before they could offer her anything, because she'd already given them everything. Real heroes don't chase headlines. They disappear into them. They don't hold microphones. They hold the line until it no longer needs holding. Ava Morgan didn't come back for glory. She came back because no one else could. And then, when the job was done, she let the sky close behind her like a chapter without a title. The name Valkyrie is etched now on the inside walls of classrooms and memorial plaques. But the woman? She lives off the grid, somewhere near the desert, in a small rented house where she still flies solo every Sunday morning in a beat-up Cessna, just for the feel of the wind. Sometimes, if you ask around, you'll hear pilots say they saw something out there. A jet where no jet should be. A whisper on the comms that calms chaos. They say the sky still listens for her, because some names aren't just ranks or legends. Some names are warnings to those who think no one is watching, and comfort to those who hope someone still is. In the story of Ava Morgan, we didn't just witness a rescue mission. We witnessed a deeper truth about human nature, one that speaks especially loud in today's world. Ava wasn't famous. She didn't crave attention. She had no desire to go viral or be turned into a symbol. She had stepped away from the world, retired, forgotten. But when the world needed someone with courage, skill, and calm under pressure, she answered. Not because she had to, but because it was the right thing to do. There's something profoundly American about that. We live in a culture that celebrates strength, resilience, and independence. And yet, in all the noise of modern life, the headlines, the chaos, the arguments online, we often forget the people who carry quiet strength, the ones who've seen the worst but never talk about it, the ones who still rise early, still show up, and still help others without being asked. Ava represents those Americans, the nurses who stayed after hours, the veterans who walk unnoticed through our towns, the single parents, the school bus drivers, the janitor who never complains, the people who have done more than we'll ever know and never asked for thanks. We need stories like this, especially now, because not every enemy comes with missiles. Sometimes the fight is silence, invisibility, loneliness, fear. And sometimes the greatest victory is not in defeating others, but in choosing not to destroy, in protecting life, holding back, and walking away with grace. Ava didn't fire a shot. She saved 55,000 people with precision, instinct, and restraint. That's not weakness. That's power with purpose. And now I want to hear from you, the viewers. Do you believe that real heroes prefer to stay in the background? Should someone like Ava be honored publicly? Or is her quiet life part of what made her extraordinary? Have you ever known someone, maybe a neighbor, a coach, a friend, who was more than they appeared? Tell us in the comments below. Share a story. You never know who might be reading or who you might inspire. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone or made you sit a little longer with your thoughts, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who still believes in quiet strength. We're building a space here where real stories are told, stories that honor depth, humility, and quiet courage. And we're so glad you've joined us. Thank you, truly, for watching, listening, and remembering. And next time you pass by someone who says little, wears old boots, or sits alone in the corner of a coffee shop, just remember, sometimes the sky still remembers their name, even if the world forgot.